Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Lake Bluff Architectural Board Review for November 2nd, 2021. And we are open. Call the roll, please.
Okay. Member Dahlman.
Here.
Member Callahan.
Here.
Member Kerouac.
Here.
And Chair Hunter.
Here.
And members Stitmer and Waymire are absent.
Sherry called me and said she was sick.
Yeah, right, right. So is Julie, yeah.
Okay, so the minutes of the last meeting, October 6th. Anybody have any comments, corrections, whatever? I had one and I didn't mark it down.
I had no comments.
I move they be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Still doing that?
Sure.
Okay.
Member Callahan.
Aye.
Member Kerouac.
Aye.
Member Dahlman.
Aye.
And Chair Hunter.
Hey.
Okay, motion is approved.
Okay, I don't know if we have any audience out there in TV land that would like to talk about something other than what's on our agenda for tonight. Do you know if we do?
Let's see here. We do have one person attending virtually, and so I'll just mention that you can press the button to raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and we'll let you speak. It's Eric Bailey, the library director. I assume he's here for the
okay.
agenda item rather than to speak about things that are not on the agenda.
Eric, are you there?
He's not raising his hand.
Oh, okay. So we move on?
Yep.
All right, so we are here to discuss the next stage of Scranton Avenue work, and Jody is here to show us what she's got. So it's your show.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jody Mariano. I'm Principal Landscape Architect with Tesca Associates. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Say, Mike, it says that host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, okay. Let's see what we got to do here. I'll promote you all the way to co-host then. That'll give you that right for sure.
Okay, that seems to
You're
have
more
done
than
it.
just a
Thank you.
panelist now.
All right, let me just make this big. Great. All right, I'm not going to ask if you can see my screen because I'm here live and in person. So thank you for having me this evening to talk about the downtown streetscape plan. This is our second meeting together, and what we're going to be speaking about tonight is I'm going to talk a little bit about the study area and the goals and the timeline, and then we've got a presentation of draft plan recommendations that I think were in your packet, and we'll go through those. And then we'd like to discuss priority projects. And then I've just put to the back of the slide deck here all of the reference materials and the past materials we looked at together, including the results from last month's Mentimeter poll. At last month's ABR meeting, you might recall there were folks here in the room, and there were also folks that were logging in online, and everybody participated in that poll. So the information that we took from that meeting was all fed into the draft plan recommendations. So we can go through the reference materials at the end during the Q&A if there's questions. So just as a refresher, this is the area that we're looking at. We're looking at the full downtown area from the metro station at the west all the way to Evanston Avenue at the east, from North Avenue at the north down to south of Center Avenue to the south. And the goals here are the same that have been communicated in the website and elsewhere. It's to enhance the downtown user experience, to preserve all of the existing trees where we can, to improve pedestrian safety, make it feel more comfortable for people to walk and bike, and to maximize the existing parking that we have and to work around that. So we've done quite a bit to date. We have an active village webpage, which has been uploaded with materials as they've kind of come forward. We had a well-attended community poll. The summary of that is on the webpage. We participated in the farmer's market on a much warmer day, and the summary from the farmer's market is also on the webpage. We reviewed the preliminary concepts together last month, and we're here to look at the draft streetscape plan. So coming out of tonight, we would be taking in your input and producing a final streetscape plan to then take forward to the village board. And just as a recap, we all looked at this last time. I won't spend too much time on it, but some of the things that we talked about during the last meeting were how people enter the downtown, if you're entering from, as if you were a visitor, primarily from the west and the south and the north, and if you were entering as a neighborhood resident from the east, how people are crossing, where we might have opportunities for these outdoor living rooms or living spaces, how to activate the park edges around the Village Green Park, and the various different street types that we have. We've got the shopping dining streets, primarily along Scranton. We've got neighborhood streets in green, sort of at the perimeters, and then this civic entry street along Center Ave. So this is the full scope of the area. What we did in our shop was we drafted the plan recommendation, and what I'm going to do tonight is take you through each of the blocks to look at it in detail, but we can always come back to this in the future. And I'm going to go out of order on purpose here, but start off with Block 2. This is the block that's already under construction. This is Scranton Avenue between Walnut and Oak. And so we've got the principles that we've been applying to this block is to, of course, maximize the on-street parking that we have. We heard a lot in the outreach about keeping sidewalks clear and out, free of clutter, which is partly about design, but also partly about management and how businesses are allowed to put out sandwich boards and outdoor dining and furnishings to make sure that we maintain a clear 5-foot minimum wide pedestrian zone, protecting existing trees, adding new trees where we can, incorporating flexible outdoor public seating. So that's the seating area that we're looking at down here that will be under construction here at the corner of Center and Scranton on the southeast corner in front of Innovasi. Maintaining the crosswalks to be very high visibility, and then to reinforce placemaking at the library and the History Museum. That's outside of Block 2, but it's very close, and we've got an enlargement that I'll show you coming up that looks at that in detail. This is the plan for Block 2, which is under construction. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but a lot of the things that are under construction or to be constructed here would be reiterated and replicated elsewhere in the CBD. Features of this plan include festoon string lighting and also masonry seat walls that match the seat walls that are in front of the Village Hall here. Block 3, so this is the block to the east between Oak Avenue and Evanston Avenue. This is where the former PNC bank site exists today. This is a transitional area between downtown and the neighborhoods to the east. And we would recommend that we reinforce that green transition. There are lawn parkways today, and the lawn parkways should remain, in our opinion. Keep the existing trees, infill new trees where we can. High visibility crosswalks, of course. And then also, we learned that the lamps, the electrical light poles on the north side of Scranton are actually not electrical at all. They're gas-powered lamps. And so one of the recommendations is to replace those with the village standard electrical lamps. And then also to continue that on the south side in front of the library. There is a quick transition after about the half block here to a very residential feel, and so the intent is to add the streetlights only to that western half of the half block. In Block 4, again, maximizing on-street parking and decluttering the sidewalks, protecting the existing trees was all important. Providing for more, specialty lighting, like we talked about before. Some of the things that we wanted to also recommend is, we talked about the Scranton Alley being a very important connector here, but expanding that east-west. There is a driveway there that doesn't get used as a driveway right now, and so we felt that was an opportune place to expand the pedestrian routing. And then to consolidate the curb cuts here and add some parking at Oak Avenue. So we've got a detail that shows that up close. So we've got the existing conditions here on the right-hand side. You can see there is a patio back here behind the church, and there is a curb cut that is no longer an active driveway space. But we could consolidate these and extend the parking down and pick up another parking space here. As far as the seating nook in front of the library, one of the things we heard a lot about in the public comment was a desire for more of those public seating areas. So there is an existing sign in front of this corner here, and we think that that sign could still be in the center of a larger open plaza space with a masonry seat wall. We found opportunities for bike racks, and so those bike racks can be along the walkway here. We can tuck a couple in here. I think there's an opportunity for a light pole up at this space here as well. So that would be a complement to what's planned to occur with the widened sidewalk area here in front of Bluffington's. Block 1, so we saved the best for last. This is, we understand, a really important block because this is the other main retail district in town. We've always, heard that we want to make sure that we're providing good connections between the Metro parking lot to the west and the downtown, and that includes Block 1. The one-way westbound pattern seems to be working today, and so, it provides calmer traffic, and it alleviates some of the travel space that could be used for pedestrian spaces. We heard a lot about the desires for a flexible street. You might remember at the last meeting, we looked at two concepts, one that was a flexible street and one that had two-way traffic, and so we heard great support for the flexible one-way street pattern at the last meeting. And this concept here really is a hybrid between those two things. I'll note on this image also here that we have proposed removing one parking space to accommodate the bump out. So where we gained one on Oak, we did propose losing one here. And then the next image will show you more, but there is a strong desire to make a clear connection between this area here that we call sort of the 100% corner and a clear view down to the metro station. So this shows it a little bit closer. Here's Scranton Avenue, here's Walnut, here's the metro station at the west. This view shed that's marked by this red dashed line is intended to kind of make this strong connection, and you can barely make it out in this photo, but you get this great view of this beautiful building. We understand that it's historic, and so there would be some historic preservation coordination to do any type of improvements, but we think that lighting it simply could be something that really helps make that strong visual connection. And then working our way east from the metro parking would be an opportunity for a bike shelter. We already have an existing sign here that announces the metro station parking. No, that's not metro station parking sign. It's a metro sign, but not the parking sign, the train station. We are proposing a new sign to identify the parking sign, the parking regulations for this lot here, and then continuing a very clean, simple concrete walkway across Sheridan Road, and then to take you into the Block 1 area. So this Block 1 area shows the one-way westbound, and what we have conceptualized is that the northern half of this would be a curbless street, so that there would be a flush elevation between this sidewalk here and the street. And then as you get down to the south side of Scranton Avenue, we talked about having a curb up against the park here, and we talked with the village engineer, and we think that that is certainly feasible, and so that's what we're proposing here. And then the space in between, we have opportunities for outdoor dining. This would all be flexible, of course. Where we have a curbless street here, we've got other ways to demarcate the perimeter of the street, so things like planter pots to mark that. We've got 5 parking spaces out there today. And as you know, parking, it's more than just parking, it's also deliveries, it's also got flexible uses during events, and so we've called it sort of a flexible lane, that it could function as parking sometimes, it could function as festival spaces at other times. And then we've got this sort of outdoor seating area that's kind of complement to what's proposed here or planned to be constructed in front of Innovasi. Again, with seat walls and festoon lighting and casual seating. And this image at the top explains that as if you were standing at the intersection looking back west to the metro station. So you can see the masonry seat walls and the festoon lighting on the right-hand side and the masonry seat walls near the Veterans Memorial on the left. These sections show what that would look like just as a diagram. So the existing section at the top, we have about an 18-foot wide sidewalk, which is a pretty generous sidewalk today. We've got our parking lane, which is 9 feet, or our flex lane rather. We've got 2 drive lanes and 18 feet of diagonal parking. By taking out 1 lane of traffic, we pick up a lot more space, almost twice as much, and we can have a 30-plus foot wide sidewalk, plus 8 feet of flex lane, 14 feet of one-way westbound, and then 18 feet of parking. So day to day, it could still function to serve cars, but during fests and events, it gives the village more flexibility to let fests and event features like outdoor tents to kind of spill onto the street. I'm going to go to the Village Green, and I'm sure we're going to come back and talk about Block 1 a little bit more. So as far as Village Green, of course, there's a lot of features about the Village Green that we want to protect: the gazebo, the fencing, the trees, the green spaces. But we did hear some good support to reinforce the perimeters with seating, and so we've proposed some seating nook type areas here. So you see these little pods. The orange dots in the middle could be a feature like a fireplace. It could be sculpture, it could be a planter. And then it's also showing some flexible seating, could be Adirondack chairs, could be other types of movable chairs, but something that gives somebody an opportunity to provide flexible seating, move a chair around to where it's most comfortable. The Veterans Memorial would stay exactly where it is, but the pavement around it would be enhanced and improved, and then supported by some more seat walls on either side of that to complement what's happening at the corner. And then this is a preview for tomorrow night. If anybody comes to the SEC meeting, we are going to be talking about the Sheridan Road South Entry Gateway Planting Scheme. So that is just diagrammatically shown here, but there are conceptual level plans to improve the landscaped entry into downtown from Sheridan Road to the south. So some enlargements here. This is Scranton and Center, or Scranton and Walnut. We've talked about this plaza in front of Innovasi and this one in front of B Market. This is the Veterans Memorial here, a cleaned up, wide, paved space in front of it with more opportunities for seat walls, a safe distance away from the Veterans Memorial so that we can give good space to the events that occur in front of that memorial. There is an existing drinking fountain here at this seating nook, and so we've proposed to replace it with a new drinking fountain, but also improve the seating area and an opportunity for a feature like a fireplace in that area as well. And then down here at Center in Scranton, a lot of kids come from Artesian Park and from the bike path in this area here, and so what we've done is to propose pulling that sidewalk a little bit away from the curb just to get people away from the roadway. We've got opportunities again for bike racks and for seat walls. This didn't feel like it would be a place where people would really hang out, so it was more just a moving through type of a space, but could give kids a place to kind of take a break, put their bike away, go into the park from there as well. And also a couple of bike racks here in front of Village Hall. So as far as amenities and furnishings, when we polled the community at the farmers market and also in the poll, we heard a lot of support to keep the furnishings generally as they are. So the bench that you have and the trash and recycling are here. In fact, I should say, as far as recycling goes, we did hear support to add recycling cans. We just have trash today. So adding a recycling can that has signage that indicates that it's for recycling was supported. As far as the bike racks, we have had lots of conversations about bike racks, as you know. At the last ABR meeting, we discussed a preference for movable bike racks, so that's what's shown here. Planter pots. We understand that the garden club has planter pots and that many of them are in poor condition, and they are much smaller planter pots that would need to get replaced, and they are typically located in front of business facades. These would be larger planter pots that would be used to mark that division between the street and Block 1 sidewalk to the north. So these are like 3-foot diameter by 2 feet tall. Drinking fountain with a pet bowl. That's a drinking fountain that would be intended to replace the existing one that's near the Veterans Memorial. And then we also heard a little bit about electrical vehicle charging stations. And as you guys probably know, there's a lot of different elements out there. Some of them are really large. If we were to do something here, we would advocate to select a unit that's smaller and to site it in places that don't block visibility. Parking lots are usually prime for these things. Also, we could consider places that are abutting green space, such as a couple of locations along the Village Hall Green, but we wouldn't suggest putting them in the main drag of Scranton Avenue because we want to keep those sidewalks as clear as possible. Decorative string lighting, examples are here. These are the types of festoon lights that are planned for the space in front of Innovasi, and we would, recommend those also for the other corners. And by the way, in all the polls and the farmers market, and even when we discussed in the last ABR meeting, there was a lot of good support for the decorative lighting. We did talk about bike shelter options, so this would be one of those opportunities between Block 1 and the metro station. And we understood that there's an attractive one in Lake Forest, which we also looked at. There's a lot of shelter types out there. We looked at a few that we thought, could be options. I will say the one in the middle probably most closely represents or replicates the forms of the metro station roof, but something to think about. Seating nooks, so there was a strong support in the outreach to have Adirondack chairs. They could be in the blue color that matches the village's logo. And then as far as fireplaces go, we did look at the one on the right that's been recently constructed in Wheaton. We did find this other one on the left-hand side that is a much lower profile that we thought could be fitting for Lake Bluff. These are gas-powered. They have a cover over them so that they're tamper-resistant and keep people safe around them. Signs. So part of our scope is to develop a concept for parking lot entry signs, and so we've mocked up a couple of options for the sign that would be placed in front of the metro station. The one at the left is a decorative column type of a sign that takes some design cues from the window details of the metro station behind it, with a brick base and a precast topper to that base, and then also incorporates some information about that sign. We would need to kind of confirm the signed copy, of course. The image in the middle or on the right, option 2, is a option that is a pole-mounted sign, and both of these use standards for sign design as far as the height of sign copy, but this has like a Lake Bluff blue sign panel with the logo on the back side of the sign. These signs are always facing one way, but you can always see the back sides of them too, so we'd like to do something decorative. And then for fun, we offered up a little weather vane component at the top. Business directory signs, a kiosk that identifies the businesses in town is something that can be considered as well. An example of that's in the middle. And then decorative poles on the right-hand side. There's already examples of some of these in downtown, but we just wanted to reinforce that there will be other regulatory signs and that they can all use the same decorative posts and hardware to match the rest of the streetscape. Streetscape plantings, we understand how important trees are, and especially native trees. So these are examples of native trees and that are salt tolerant, that can be used in the streetscape. Same thing for the understory, native shrubs and perennials, and how they benefit the wildlife in the area. They're listed here. With that, we do want to talk about what questions and comments you have, of course, and then as far as what the priority projects would be. In my mind, it kind of clustered into three main categories. Block 1 for sure could be a project. The perimeter elements to the Village Green could be a project. And then the Metro Parking Station signage and entry, including that bike shelter, could be a project as well. So with that, I think we'll just open it up to questions and comments.
Do we start with us?
It's up to you whether you want to start with board members or start with the public.
Let's start with the public this time, because the public's out there.
Sure.
So, Rob? I think that's Rob. It's hard to tell who's who, but why don't you come up and, yeah.
Yeah, come up to the microphone, that way the people at home can hear you speak.
Okay, well, my name is Rob Douglas. I guess I should say where I live and all that, too.
Sure.
673 Maple Avenue. I'm also the architect of Block 1 12 years ago, and I'm one of the managing members of the property, too. So, I was not fully aware of the hybrid scheme for the Block 1. I guess I want to focus on Block 1, because that's obviously an element here that I'm knowledgeable of, with quite a bit of depth. So what I was looking at was the two schemes, one with the one-way traffic, one with the two-way traffic, and trying to do pros and cons on both of them. And, they both have strengths, and they both have, some things that are not really as good as one would like, but, it's not a perfect world. But I guess what I did is I went through the pros of at least concept one, which was the Festival Street. And obviously it increases the sidewalk on the north side, which is a great addition to that whole streetscape. But I have to say that when it comes to one-way versus two-way, I do have a rather strong opinion on that. It seems like it's all going toward one way, but I don't think anyone really has understood the consequences of that. It may work in isolation of this block, but in reality, the cut-through traffic that people are, now they can't come up Scranton on a two-way, and that's what we've seen for the last summer out here. So anybody from Sheridan Road who wants to get into downtown, the shortcut they're taking is through the parking lot behind Block 1. And this is problematic. I've observed vehicles going through there quite regularly all day, and actually traveling at speeds that looks like an accident waiting to happen. So I think any time you take a parking lot and allow a roadway to exist through it, you're going to have some difficulties with pedestrians and vehicles. I made the village aware of this last summer, and I think the police department's aware of it too, but I mean, I'm not sure what you can do to stop people from taking that path of least resistance into the central business district. Right off Sheridan Road, through the back of the building, come up Walnut, and boom, you're right in town, right at the post office, and that's typically where people's primary destination is, at least when it comes to the vehicles. So there are some real safety concerns, I think would say life safety concerns I would have with this traffic diverting it around the building through the parking lot, which is also private property. It's not a public right-of-way. So that's something that I think needs to be seriously looked at as far as the trade-off between single lane west traffic or two-way traffic. I do really like this no curb, which is, I think, a really creative idea because it creates great flexibility. You can really adapt that street for a variety of different venues during the calendar year, from summer events, block parties, things of that nature. I think it's a really adaptable, flexible idea. And of course, when you eliminate the curve, when you have a closed off block for an event, no curves means no tripping. So That is a real benefit to the flexibility that the no curb concept provides. So I think that's a tremendous idea. And, expanding the seating, the two-way does not have as much four tops on it that the other one has. I think concept one had 26 four tops. The second one, which was the one-way, has up to 35. So you do have more capacity with the one-way street. That's certainly a pro, but the con would be the traffic that comes into town is cutting through the back of the building. I can't say I've been scientific about it, spending a day there doing a counter on cars, but I can tell you it's frequent, very frequent. Now, if we looked at the two-way and not having as much sidewalk space and potentially less parking, one idea that was dabbled with years ago were parklet ideas, and something that we've seen in a lot of communities during the whole COVID time. And that's taking out some parallel parking and doing temporary structures to accommodate additional outside seating. And with the curbless system here, you can expand the parking or the seating area during the warmer months, and then the parklets can be removed, and then you bring in more on-street parking in the off-season time. So there's some flexibility, I think, that could be considered when it comes to the parklet ideas. I've got images of numerous parklets that I've seen in other towns, and they can be done very attractively too. Now, the trouble with this scheme too is the fact that you are losing a lot of diagonal parking on the south going into the Village Green. I can't say I've really gone out there and looked at those trees, but is there a way that the diagonal parking could be pushed a bit farther south so we could still maintain two-way traffic but still not lose, I think it's 12 parking spaces on the diagonal, so we're losing 6 in this scenario. And I know parking is valuable. So as far as some of the other details, I guess I could just, in conclusion, the two-way road I feel is really important. That then eliminates that cut through traffic through the back. At least it takes the pressure off of it. Otherwise, we're going to have to figure out how to gate that entry going into the parking lot. But that's a complex problem. But that cut through traffic is a serious issue. I suggested the idea of maybe moving the diagonal parking to the south, and any trees that might be interfered with, maybe they could be the trees that be used into the north side of the street. Trees can be prepared for spading at a later date and then moved, so that could be a possibility. The fire pit seating, actually there's a fire pit right at the face of the entry going into the elevator lobby of the building. I would suggest maybe taking that access line and pull it across to the Village Green, because having a gathering area right there at that point of entry, I think could be a problem when it comes to in the event of an egress, emergency egress out of that building, fire, whatever it may be. You have second and third floor occupants coming out of either the front door or the back door out to the parking lot. So we do need to make sure we are cognizant of providing adequate egress coming out of the building in an event of emergency. We could have a lot of people piling out of that door, and then if you got a bunch of people sitting there at a fire table, it could be a congestion point. So now, by the way, the greenery here I think is intriguing as far as the grass areas, because that may give some trees a fighting chance to perform. They've had difficulty on that whole north side for the last 10 years. So I'm not an arborist, but this looks like it may have some possibilities of actually allowing these trees to actually take root and grow. Let's see here, the parklets, I think we should try to keep that in mind. The other thing too that was lost in all these schemes was we do have a loading zone right in front of Lake Forest Bank and Trust. That's gone away, so I'm not really sure where any loading can occur in this area. The other issue I would see is, let's see, what was it? I'm trying to remember now. Well, one of the problems we have right now with the single lane traffic is during the farmer's market. The street used to have a one-way during the market. Now it's completely shut down. So the bank on Fridays, Lake Forest Bank and Trust, their customers have no access to the drive-through via their vehicles. So it'd be nice if we could try to figure out how to make that still usable for the customers of the bank, and but still, try to achieve some of these objectives that we're doing here. So those are my quick thoughts. But I really feel strongly about not doing this one-way traffic, because I think it's just compounding problems on the building to the north and all the parking and back. So those are my thoughts. And
Thanks,
you.
Rob. Well, Rob, before you go, maybe this is just a Band-Aid solution. I was not aware of the cut-through in your parking lot, the extent that you're describing. But those are all tenant spaces. They're not, there's nothing public about that back there. Am I right?
Correct.
And would it be totally out of line to say, I'm gonna put a gate there?
Well, there is, way back when that project was, went through the whole review process, we do have parking behind Lake Forest Bank and Trust that is identified as customer parking. And that's really for the customers of the bank or any of the retailers. So gating that is, kind of defeats what that parking serves right now. But I really don't know what the solution would be, but there's a lot of cut-through traffic right now.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
And it's, well, and the thing is, and I don't know, maybe it's just the world today, but, road manners seem people to be a lot of aggressive drivers these days, and people move quickly. And I can tell you, parking lots, for me, I am so defensive because of the speed in which people move through them. So, and I'm now beginning to see it in behind this building. So it's definitely a concern and a liability exposure, so.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions, Rob, before he sits down? No?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Who's next back there? Anybody? Or are you just observing?
Just observing.
Okay.
I wanted to speak to Rob's point about the cut-through traffic, if I may. Is that all right?
Oh,
And this is not a rebuttal, but just, Rob brought that to our attention, and the police department, I spoke with the chief of police, he sent officers over there, they have observed it from time to time, and had we didn't write anybody a citation, but we had conversations like, why are you cutting through here? This is not good. And it was explained to me that it was low frequency and difficult to predict when it was happening. Because we looked at, is there a way we could stage it, our police enforcement efforts strategically, but it was based off when we went out there in various shifts, it was just difficult to predict when it was going to happen again. So, but you're there more than we are, Rob, and you may see more than we saw, but that's what we observed. And I would certainly say your concerns are the village's concerns. At the last meeting, they talked about the same type of thing, the idea that one-way, turning that block one-way westbound helps improve the public safety of the public street, right? The idea of controlling the traffic, the flow, limit the number of movements, And that was, the traffic calming was one of the values that you all cited and talked about at the last meeting. So there's trade-offs, and I don't know if Jody has had long enough to think about, maybe there's some other solutions for Rob's predicament in the cut-through. But anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Walnut?
Yeah, but let me just add, because I've been around here forever, when Augie used to own the village market, and Walnut was one way from Scranton all the way, and he would sit on his stoop and count cars by the dozens going the wrong way because it was a shortcut. So I don't think we should diminish what Rob's concern is, because as you say, and this is 30 years ago or more, that, road manners are, I'm gonna do what I wanna do when I wanna do it. So, I don't, on the other hand, I think shouldn't be talking, so let's go. Anybody else?
I see we do have a couple people online, so
we do,
if
okay.
anyone wants to speak, just raise your hand there and I'll give you permission to speak.
I mean, while we're waiting on that, I guess I could offer a couple of things. I didn't realize that cars were cutting through until this evening either, but, gating is obviously not preferable. I wanted to point to something. If gating doesn't make sense, there might be other traffic calming things that can be done to the surface of the parking lot, things like rumble strips or pavement treatments that at least slow cars down. As far as the loading area, that certainly could be adjusted. We have this area here where at the alleyway, the curb takes a dive to the north, and if it has to take a dive a little bit further to the north, we've got the space to do that. We've showed a pretty generous left turn lane. That loading area is approximately in this space today, so that would be a pretty easy modification to be made. I don't think that would negatively impact the plan. Oh, and then I guess the other thing I just wanted to also mention, I understand the need to, provide good access and clear zones here around the seating area. This is a pretty wide space, so like for scale, we've got probably at the very least 10 feet between the face of the building and the face of this fire pit. And we always try and maintain 6. I think it's even more than that, but I think that's an excellent point. We want to make sure that we provide good clear zone throughout. And again, these things could all be adjusted if we need to dip this further to the south in order to make more clear space.
Thanks, Jody.
Eric Bailey, Library Director, did you want to speak?
Yeah. Oh, am I too loud?
Maybe
That come
just a
through
little.
loud?
You
Maybe
maybe
just a little?
just a little loud. I could probably adjust
Okay.
that too.
Okay. I'll try and modulate here then.
Okay.
Okay. No, and I don't mean to pile on the question on the one way through, but I can second that definitely is something that needs to be considered. The library's parking lot goes off of Oak Avenue, which is currently one way, and we've long had issues with people cutting through there to get from Oak to Scranton. It's a pretty narrow lot. We've had some close calls with people speeding through and nearly hitting staff. So definitely to be considered. My questions, of course, are mostly on the other end of the street, on the east end of the plan here around the library. So for the area there, the proposed seating area by the library, there we go, on Oak and Scranton. I assume that is all space that's currently within the right-of-way. Is that correct?
So the right-of-way, we think, is approximately through the center of this green space. So I would say, yes, the bulk of it is on right-of-way, although we probably want to verify and for sure coordinate with the library just to make sure that, this worked for your operations as well.
Sounds good. Um, and it helps looking a little bit more closely at the plan here. I don't know if it's come up in any of the design meetings previously, but the library is planning to do a bump out to the west. And I think one thing that you would want to be certain to consider would be considering the library's footprint as it's going to be 5 years from now, rather than as it is right now. My understanding of the plan that we've got on the table is that the setback would match the house to the south there, following the proposed construction.
Can I clarify, does that mean that the building is bumping out to the west?
Yes.
And so are we looking at the setback of this building to the south as being the area where the library building would bump out to?
Yes.
Gotcha, okay. That's helpful to know, thank you. Yeah, and so I think the area that I would be honing in on, and Eric, I'm sure you were looking the same, is the limits of where this masonry seat wall would be. And for sure, if this thing, would want to shift a little bit to the east and to the north, or, squish down a little bit in size to make sure that we have good, comfortable space between the building and the seating area, that should be done.
Definitely. So just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, I really applaud the work that's being done here. I like the ambiance, the park-like atmosphere that's being introduced in the downtown area. Really looks lovely. So I'm pretty excited about this. The bike racks that we do have at the library are very often full up in the summer. So the idea of getting some additional seating and bike racks out around the library is definitely appealing.
Thank you.
Eric,
And-
can I ask you a question? Do you have preliminary drawings of your proposed expansion at some point?
Yes.
I know that's probably not etched in stone yet, but it wouldn't be a bad idea if you could give a copy of that to Jody so that let's not undo something in a couple of years that we're doing now.
Always a good plan.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Mike Dorniker, did you want to speak? I will click the allow to talk button in case you do. Okay, go ahead.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I just wanted to echo what Eric said about how great the work that's been done here is, and I just wanted to chime in a little bit on Block 1 stuff. And I really love the kind of the hybrid you've come up with here. It's great, kind of the best of both worlds. With the consideration of the one way. Now I work there 5 days a week in the morning. I have noticed there is a uptick of cars in the back. And so I wonder if maybe speed bumps or something along those lines is an approach that can be used, because I think this layout really transforms the downtown area and is beautiful. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mike. Anybody else?
Nope, no one else online.
All right, what does this group think? Neil, you want to start?
I'm very appreciative of Rob's comments. I've been in favor of the one-way, but he points out some questions that I wouldn't have noticed because I work in Highland Park every day and I'm not here to see things that he sees firsthand. So I think they've handed you some new issues to solve, Jody. Yeah, I do have some comments regarding Block 2. Can you
Yeah.
put the map up there for Block 2?
Which one would you like to look at? This one?
Well, that one will do. One comment is regarding right opposite Bluffington's. There's a a diagonal corner there that's no parking,
That's the way it is now.
right opposite, right there.
This, on Scranton, that area here?
Yeah, it seems to me that a possible use for that space would be motorcycle parking. I'm aware of a space right near my office in Highland Park that's used for motorcycles, and there are a couple of people that park their motorcycles there all day long, almost every day.
It's a great idea.
So I just thought I'd throw that out as
Good idea.
a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
The other thing is, on the north side that I'm concerned about, is the sidewalks that are going in, I see numerous different colors of concrete. There's some that's almost white, there's some that's gray, and there's some that's a little bit darker, particularly if you stand right outside where the post office is. And it just seems to me that somehow with the specs that we're putting out, it should be more consistent.
You know, I was out, thank you for noticing that. I was out on site the other day and talked to the resident engineer about the same thing. We noticed the same thing. There is a white kind of overlay that's appearing on some of the sidewalks, and what I've been told is that the contractor was adding a sealer of some kind. I spoke with the engineer and did not hear that a sealer was specified, and so they were going to look into that further, but you're right, there were no specifications for that, but what I had been told was that that white color is supposed to go away. But I can't really speak in depth about it because it really was something that the engineer had specified.
Well, when I look at the concrete, the existing concrete on the south side, there are some areas that are different colors there too.
Yeah, there are
They're
some areas
Not patches, but when it was really originally poured.
on the south side.
And it just seems to me that there could be something in the specs that controls that a little bit better.
Yeah, there is a specific mix, but we'll look into that further and provide some input back to Drew about that. But yeah, our intent is that all the concrete be the same color.
And I think what's on the north side, it's too bad that it's that different. I'm not sure it will go away. But it just seems to me maybe we can get better control over that on the south side when that's done. So that's the only two things I had for now.
Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I think from what we've started with, or what you started with, to where we are, it's a lovely progression. I think, the block one issue with the one-way, I don't know if it's simply putting a no-through traffic sign like we have on 176 going into the East Terraces or that North Terraces, off of Green Bay. It may be for 2 weeks we give out tickets and we curtail that use of that, because it is unfortunate that people use that. But I would hate to change everything for that reason. I think there's a way to remedy that, hopefully that we don't forego what we've been working towards for that one issue, if there's a way to remedy it. A stupid little minor issue is having those bike racks at Block 4, at that circle, kind of the entry to the park, the main corner.
This one down here?
Yeah, and I can just see that being, because to me, that's a nice primary point to the park. And I could see after 2 weeks, those bike racks are all over the place and not controlled, or the grass is being so I don't know, that's a very important corner to the village. I think just as one of those uninterrupted natural escapes that we don't have a lot of, that's probably the only one that's truly just leads from nature to nature. And I'd hate to interrupt it with some unsightly bike racks. I know we want to put bike racks, but I don't think that's the place to do it. I just think that's going to be an eyesore after a while.
I mean, the other thing, I think that's a really good point. And the other thing, just to mention, if the village truly does go forward with the movable bike racks, which I think is fine, I mean, they should be placed on concrete. So in this case, this graphic is a little bit deceiving, but
Yeah.
in this case, they would all be on their own standalone concrete pads. So these concrete pads would be sort of jutting out into the park. We probably could omit that altogether and, you know, still allow, you know, movable bike racks. You know, you could have a rack here and a rack here and just
Yeah, I
diminish
think
the
if
quantity
you
too.
just don't line the whole corner.
Sure.
Just be a,
I think
and
that
I
makes
do
sense.
like how you widened that, expanded that corner for, because
Yeah.
that is a big, like during the 4th of July parade, that is a big gathering point, and that's a nice. And there's, yeah, exactly, there are kickstands on bikes. And then just with the connection of the alley, Scranton Alley, you know, using that driveway, I think there needs to be communication with the owners, and then, you know, I know that there's a possible restaurant going out, so there may be a little more complexity to that than just having this path go through and having that work with what the future plans are for that area,
Sure, that's a good point.
but that's just for future reference. But you know, overall, I think it's a lovely plan, and we're very fortunate to be able to have these discussions.
Thank you.
Tim?
Okay. I'll go to block 1. Before the meeting, I was totally behind the one-way that was planned there. I like that you kept the diagonal parking spaces. That one side is going to be, you know, curbless. It's very thoughtful. I think it looks great. I didn't realize there was a problem with people cutting through in the back parking lot, so I mean, we'll have to address that somehow. But overall, I think it looks great.
Okay, all right, my turn then. I have just a couple of questions and a couple of concerns, and maybe the concern is not well-founded. But the entrance to Block 1, if you're driving west, seems like it's really pinched.
This entrance here from Walnut.
It's like just way too tight.
My cursor's not keeping up. You're talking about in here.
Right there.
Yeah.
That looks like I could jump across it. I'm pretty sure I can't, but I don't have the scale here, but it just looks very skinny compared to everything else where you've got, you know, pretty well dimensioned out. And maybe that's just the way I'm seeing it. So that's one thing. I really like the curb and the curbless sides of the street. I think we'd have an issue with what Rob is talking about, but I think there's another issue that this does solve, which is the traffic that is building up just an unbelievable, starting about 3 o'clock. And it comes out from under the viaduct and up the hill. And maybe that has a method of slowing people down, because prior to that, they're just flying around that bend up there. And so that's the advantage of the one-way street, is to eliminate that whole issue. But it doesn't solve the issue that Rob's bringing up, which I think is a very important issue. The other thing, let's see, the sidewalk, where you've made it very, very wide across the street. That seems like it's really wide, and it's going to be a really sea of concrete.
Which area are you referring to? North side?
Yeah, look, across Sheridan Road in front of the train station.
Over here?
That seems like a huge pad of concrete. And I don't know what to do about that, because I see what you're trying to do there.
You know, we were trying to make it, you know, as wide and as open as possible. That said, this is still a pretty wide sidewalk if we were to provide a green parkway up against the curb and keep the plantings low so that you still have good visibility. But I see what you're saying.
Let's see. Those are kind of the big things, I think. Otherwise, I think we've made some great strides, and I don't know that I have anything else. I do have something, and I don't know if you went out there and walked the street right now. I brought this up to the police department to tell you Freddie Day That's 2 chiefs ago, 3 chiefs ago. And is that, it's like every other post has got a sign on it. Not a village sign, but, a regulation sign. But no
Oh, yeah.
parking, no do this, no do that, no that. I don't care how much money we spend doing stuff out there, isn't there something we can do to diminish or do something with those signs?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you run into this all the time. You become blinded to them until you don't.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think there is a lot of sign clutter in many communities. I mean, a lot of times the way that those things pop up is if there's an issue, the answer is add another sign. And so oftentimes when we'll do wayfinding signage programs, we'll find opportunities to consolidate panels on poles or to, consolidate multiple messages onto one sign. But I've worked on lots of projects where once you walk the property, you could probably do this today, walk the downtown with staff and probably come up with a half dozen or so signs that could just be omitted. Sometimes we're always looking at adding and not necessarily, what can be taken away.
Yeah, and most of them are 2-hour parking or no parking to curb, I mean, they're regulatory
Sure,
official signs, not village signs, so.
but even those regulatory signs don't necessarily all have to be.
2 thoughts that go with that. One is, I seem to remember years ago, somebody talking about if you go from the fire station down 176 toward the bridges, there are something like 40 or 50 signs in that little area.
It's incredible, it's a sign city.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking of is one of the proposed signs was a business directory. And I question the need for that because our business district is small enough that I don't know that a directory is even needed.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, some communities are using things like this. Sometimes they're double-sided, so you can list the businesses, which is nice to kind of promote the businesses in town, even though there might not be a lot of them. It's an opportunity to promote events and festivals that might be coming up, and so these are oftentimes, changeable message type signs, like a cabinet that gets locked. So it's certainly something to consider if there is a desire. Speaking of signs, since, we're looking at it, does the ABR have a preference between option 1 and option 2?
Those are really tall,
Tall?
yeah, so you don't run into them, I guess. It's 7'6".
Yeah.
Yeah.
from the
So you
bottom
don't
of the
steal
sign
the
to
weather vane.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. So they're intended to be very visible, and so we look for, 3-inch lettering height or 4-inch lettering height, and then the bottom of the sign to be 7.5 feet above grade is sort of a standard, so that if people walk near them, they don't plow into them.
Now, we're talking about getting rid of signs. Now I'm about to suggest adding more signs.
Sure, and the only reason that we've put this here is that, one of the things that we heard a lot in the early outreach was, gee, we have this big Metro parking lot here, and most people don't realize that they can even park there. And so the purpose of a gateway sign or an entry sign is to educate them that parking is available.
One additional sign that would be interesting to consider is we've got, the historical group has put these plaques all over town in the sidewalks. But I think the train station and this building are the only places that they're in the downtown area.
There's another one just on the east side. It's it's east on Scranton in the neighborhood. Evanston, yeah.
That's the children's home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking right in the heart of downtown, it might be
Yeah.
nice to add some more historical plaques.
Yeah, the historical plaques are wonderful. It's a great idea. Yeah, it's great storytelling.
So Jody, isn't that sign, the idea of these signs were for the median by the train station? Is that where you had thought that these would go?
Correct.
Do you want to bring that up?
Yeah, thank you. And the only reason for that is that, we're balancing with the existing signs that you have. And of course, yes, sign clutter is something to be mindful of, but so we have an existing sign here, the hanging sign that says train station at this location approximately. And so the proposed sign would be in this area. And by the way, I didn't really even talk about it, but this is a really wide entrance and exit into the metro parking area. And so we think that we can make use of some of that space by adding a green median and channeling where traffic can go, and so that becomes a place for the sign and also another place for greenery.
I guess another thought I had, just looking at it, was the location of such as they are, the bike racks at the station now are just sort of the old ramshackle things, and they're up closer to the tracks. Whether this is the best location for it, because it's kind of right next to the Blue Star Highway, little grouping there, I think. But I mentioned this to Drew, and we've talked about this off and on, and I don't know if you've seen it. There's the Green Bay Bridge, which is supposed to be demolished and replaced. It's got this archway, pieces of steel that do this. And we looked at it with Drew and myself and Jeff, and what can we do with these things if you could possibly even take it apart? And one of the ideas I had, and I brought it up a couple of meetings ago, or a couple of months ago, anyway, was, well, can they be repurposed as a shelter kind of thing, whether it's something for bikes at the beach or something for bikes up here? And that's just something before we launch into, because the Historical Society wants us to save them. Not our Lake Bluff one, but the Illinois one, right? And it's like, this may be an impossible task.
Do we have documentation about the sizes of them and the heights and all?
Well, they have to be sawed off somehow or something. They're pretty big.
Yeah,
They're big.
that would be
And
cool.
they're
I
very
mean,
When they were installed as part of the bridge, they were repurposed from the original bridge.
oh, really?
This architectural feature to support pathways along both sides.
Uh-huh.
But when they were installed, they were done in a way that it was contemplated they would never be used again. Because they were set in concrete,
Oh.
a foot of concrete.
I think you'd have to saw them up.
You have to saw them, and they get, and some of them are rust bit, and others are not.
Yeah.
But they do
Sure.
have some neat architectural elements to them visually.
And there's a lot of them, so you don't need that many.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm just throwing that
No,
out
that's
as a thought,
cool.
because it is a sort of a historic piece.
that's the Green Bay Bridge.
It's on the Green Bay Bridge, yeah.
I mean, if you look at the stock bike shelter items, they're not more than, I'm trying to pull it up here.
It would
It's
cost
not
probably
mon-
a
it's-
lot more money to do what I'm talking about than to buy one of these things.
Oh, for sure, but now you've got an opportunity for another cool plaque.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, but as I say, these are nothing more than just, a really simple structure, and then it gets covered with, some sort of, skin.
Just a
So,
Lexan or something top.
yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if there was a way to figure that out.
They're old and rusty and cool.
Yeah, well, yeah. You'd have the only kind of
I was gonna
bike
say it.
shelter like it.
Yep. Can we talk real quick about these fire pits?
Yeah.
Things? I'm just trying to figure out what the reality of that is in our town, and is that like natural gas, propane? Because there's communities now that are starting to outlaw natural gas for residential, for use altogether, like. Yeah. So I'm just trying to see if that's even a thing for us, or.
Well, that's a really good point. So, these two examples are natural gas powered, and they, have to be sort of a closed system so that public works staff could safely turn them on and turn them off, and public can't get too close to it and get hurt. So,
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point. If it's not gas, what are the options? I mean, is there some other sort of electric or propane component? I've not seen that before, but.
It just seems, I don't know, it just seems like a very complicated amenity to add to the community with a lot of downside.
Matt, I mean, Lake Bluff beaches have had success for whatever reason.
Yeah.
With, wood burning fireplaces down the beach forever. And
Right. Yep.
Is that,
It's pretty messy down there, though.
Yeah.
but it's a beautiful amenity, right?
It is.
I mean, these lids could be designed to be locked, I suppose, if you wanted to cover it, uncover it,
Yeah.
make it a wood burning, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I just raised a teenage boy, so I'm just afraid of exposed fire unattended.
Yeah.
That's just a simple aside. But I do think that the fuel issue and just all those,
Sure.
because that's a lot of underground piping but I mean, the idea is, anything like that, the idea is great. It's just finding out the practicality of it and if it makes sense, and like having 4 of them spotted throughout makes sense, or just one nice one somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't, we found, opportunities for these nooks. It doesn't mean that the fire feature would necessarily need to be at every single one of them, but maybe taking the fire element out of it for the moment. What do you all think about having these 4 little nooks? Do you feel like this is the right amount, too many, too few?
I feel like they're orientated the wrong way. Like, if you're at a park, I think I'm gonna be sitting looking into the park, not towards traffic. But I do see, but I do see that the availability, like when you're walking by, the idea of you entering into the space, it's just a tough one for me in terms of where the focus wants to be.
Sure.
I think once I'm there, I'd want to look into the
You don't want to look at the street, you want to
the
look
green
at.
space, right.
I agree.
So maybe there's a configuration that allows for both. Something like that, so that's
Yeah.
not all,
So like the one up at down here by
right.
Scranton, that one's more appealing. I mean, I think the ones on the north in general are more appealing because we have a much wider parkway with more trees, whereas down here, we don't have that much space.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it on the inside, it's just, I think you would want to, if you're sitting there, you'd want to be sitting, kind of looking, watching your kids, whatever it is, it's a nice
Sure.
gathering.
Actually, the most active corner is where the planter is right now. Where what would that be? The southeast corner of Block 2. That's where all the action is. That and down.
You're talking about
down
right here?
center. If you were gonna put one someplace, it might be, we're kind of jumping around, but I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
Something else, I don't want to occupy everybody's time here, but something else that we talked about, or I talked about at the last meeting was, this is all kind of centered around 6 or 7 months of time with all the street activity out there and the seating and eating outside and whatnot, is that we can maybe start to control a little bit about what kind of, if somebody wants to put tents up, it's not just random things with Jersey blocks and cords and whatnot, to hold everything down, that we kind of come up with a system and put inserts in so that, it's clean when it's not there, and it's very nice when it is there, and it all has to be compatible with the building that Rob did. And, I don't know exactly how to go about that. And whether that's the village's issue, but otherwise, it's, things just get mungled up if you just leave it to people sometimes. That's why we're here.
Well, and I think to your point too, we've seen lots of cool things happening with wintertime events. And so, while we do see the things happening within the 6 to 7 months, there are so many communities, like if we look at, Minnesota, for instance, who, make use of the whole year and, with the right amount of programming and warm drinks, people will, as we saw over the last year, will still, tend to use the spaces in the winter.
Yeah, that's okay. Just let it be organized. I have nothing else.
Like, these could be permanent, and in the winter,
Yeah,
So
that's
that
what
it
I'm
could be
talking about.
used
You
in the
find
winter.
something that's really a nice piece, and you set it up for that.
yeah.
Anybody else have anything else?
No.
Jody, you got any questions that we haven't,
I'm going to scroll through. I mean, I feel like you all have touched on all of the elements pretty well. I don't have any other questions.
I had one more.
Yeah.
Now that I'm seeing the planting areas that are starting to appear with the knuckles and whatnot,
Oh, yeah.
what's going in there?
What's going in there?
I mean, I talked to Drew about this multiple times, and we kind of think grass. Because
Right, so-
anything else is a maintenance issue, and, ground cover is dogs, and flowers is maintenance.
Well, yeah, so the way that, I can say that the way that the plans were specified, the bid specs, will provide 24 inches depth of a good soil planting mix. and a top layer of sodded lawn, just to keep it over winter.
Okay,
But the intent is to have that good depth of good planting soil mix so that the sod could be removed and replaced with plantings. We wanted to get through this process first, and I think also there were budgets to be mindful of. But, you know, these plant lists that we have here are natives and they are salt and urban tolerant. And so, you know, we would recommend using things that are from these palettes and that are very low so that we promote good visibility, but still provide color. You know, what's out there today is a really attractive garden. It's a shame that it's being removed in a way, but we'd like to put something back that also provides that seasonal
Yeah.
interest.
that has suffered from maintenance too,
Sure,
yeah.
sure.
Anyway, just bringing that up.
Can I ask a couple questions that you're over here? Can you go to the block ones?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry, the Village Green.
Which one first?
The fire pit issue, more or less. So the idea about the orientation, I think that
Mm-hmm.
those comments are spot on. Yeah, is it a faux pas or undesirable to have a circle that would be, we talked a lot about flexibility. Could you do a circle and have the path go through it so you can have the ability to use both? How does that visually strike you all, if that makes sense? The idea that you had you know.
Meaning if we took this one and basically did a mirror image and had another one on the other, on the south side?
So people could
Mhm.
orient, especially if it's the loose Adirondacks or something like that. Is that too much impervious surface in the green space? Is it?
No.
I don't know, I just,
If you do it on screen, if you did both two circles on screen, that would be okay, but I would eliminate the computer tonight.
because that's the old, alley, where the Jim Campbell alley, remember that, Bob?
Yeah.
Through here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I don't know if that'd be interesting to sit underneath that or not, because some of those trees have not lasted so well.
Right. I mean, I think, you know, generally, we're trying to find opportunities where we can add paving and not impact the trees. Say it from there.
No, it, part of what, hi, my name is Susan Boyle. I live here in my community. I love Lake Bluff, and part of what's so charming about the Village Green is that it is a wide open space where the kids are running and playing and doing all of these things. And I think that, yeah, having fire pits would be great, but that means like, where's the firewood coming from? Because it should not be propane. It should be firewood, and is the village providing that? Then there's a cost of that. Who's cleaning up those ashes? Who's maintaining that space? I think that it would be fun to have the fire pits on Scranton, but that would mean that maybe one of those restaurants on that block take responsibility for those fire pits, because there's a huge cost associated with that. You know, if people are just bringing their own wood on a Sunday night, like, you know, it has to just be village space. But while the restaurants are open, somebody needs to maintain that space. Because it will potentially also late night, right off of Sheridan, possibly attract people off of Sheridan who are like, oh, there's a fire pit party going on over here. What's going on? Are there going to be limits of hours of people being able to use those fire pits? There's a lot to consider.
You know, even without the fire pits though, I'm not so sure that the area to sit, there's benches along the sidewalk right now in various stages of repair or and they're never the same benches, which I'm sure you've seen, but it's not a bad place to just sit.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree with
I
Matt,
kind of
some of them should look into the park more than that. But, and then they're just flat space, so they're not interrupted by, you know, farmer's market or anything else, the art show. But it's not a bad idea to have some seating areas there, I don't think.
No.
Maybe not as many as you have, but maybe that's okay. I think the fire pit is a neat idea, but maybe not a good idea.
It is a lot to maintain, and the only ones that we've seen in public spaces are the gas-powered. But I think the comments about gas-powered are really good comments, you know? But regardless, you know, the idea is to provide, the benches that are in the park today are nice, they're fixed, but providing somebody, you know, flexibility in their ability to move a seat to be private or to be with someone, you know, will make it that much more used in the park.
No, just to be clear, I don't know if I heard it, a preference for the sign.
I don't think we heard it yet.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We heard that they are big.
I like
tall.
the second without the wind,
The one in the middle?
Yeah.
yeah, without
Yeah.
the wind vane.
Simple site.
Yeah,
Did you say
Weather
without the
vane.
wind,
yeah,
without the weather vane?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
me
have a
too.
thought about the sign.
I'm like,
course.
that's gonna get
This
stolen.
is a free-for-all.
Or
Let's go
broken or
ahead.
something.
Yeah.
Because, well, you mentioned a sign on that, island pulling out of the train station onto Sheridan. Can you go, like, so, as the, you know, wife, I drove my husband to and from the train many mornings and picked him up in the evenings, and it's already a really hard angle, like, cause the Lake Bluff Garden Club does an amazing job with everything, and everything's so beautiful. Those bushes tend to get really big, and it's hard to actually see north up Sheridan to be able to turn left or right out of the train station, eastbound. Just a thought. So I don't think a sign there is an ideal location.
And I feel like I could at least speak a little bit. I think you're right. We didn't really talk about the orientation of this sign. I think it would want to be, you know, here, but also very visible. And so typically what we've done is, you know, look at where cars are coming from. We're trying to get the attention of folks that are driving along Sheridan Road. And so most likely this would be a double-sided sign facing the north and the south side, so that we're capturing their views. Placed up high, so, you know, 7.5 feet tall, so that people can see it from their car. When you're in your car, you know, your eyeballs are like 3.5 feet above grade.
Could you just have like a P on there? I mean,
And nothing else? Sure.
it
You
just
can.
seems like when I look for parking, I just look for that big P and I just head in that direction. And all that other information, if you're driving 40 miles an hour, you're not reading that anyways by the time, you know, you're kind of committing one way or another. And it just seems like simpler might be more beneficial to, maybe a smaller sign that just has a P on it, nice little frame, and kind of call it a day. I don't know that, and then maybe there's other restrictions within there, but that's just a thought. I like the simplicity of something like that.
But
So
are
we
you-
talked about that, Matt, and I mean, it's really, the sign could probably even say public parking free after 10 a.m.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can minimize the
that's
language.
perfect, yeah. You don't even need to say P, you can just say P free after, I mean, everybody knows the P is public parking.
Right.
I mean, that's just, I think you could simplify that so much.
Are you
think
saying,
that-
though, that Jody, that the sign is perpendicular to Sheridan Road?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
because it occurs to me, if it's not, you don't see the train station, you see the blue sign
Right, yeah,
in front of it.
Yeah.
That's
which
perpendicular.
just by perspective is gonna be bigger than. But if it's the other way, it's just a blade,
right.
Yeah, perpendicular.
yeah.
I think the only other comment about the information on the sign is that, you know, we heard so many folks say, we didn't know we could park
We
there.
don't know,
And
right.
so I think having the word free or some other way
Yeah,
to
no.
convey that it's free to the public would be useful.
So to that point, then, that there is no back, it's two-sided.
Yeah.
That answers the other question.
So as long as we're talking about stuff, I know that one of the recommendations was to figure out a way to light the train station so that you can actually see it at night. And I don't know how that's gonna be done without, you know, you don't wanna do the big ground lights shining up. I think that's gonna take a little bit of thought before, don't let the HPC decide.
Oh, no, of course, and I think that, no, not to
I
let them
spent 19
decide,
years
but
on
that
it,
they
so.
would need to approve whatever is decided.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether it's the ground-mounted uplights or whether it be, you know, some other.
Something
tastefully
subtle.
done- It's gotta be subtle,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. I mean, but I think, you know, it's such an attractive building. Yeah, no, the intent is that whatever is recommended out of this plan needs to go to HPC for their approval.
Okay. Are we questioned out? It's only 8:25.
So what else do you want to see before you recommend something to the village board? Do you want more details on how we may try to write a prescription for block one, Rob Douglas's?
I think that's a solution, I mean, a problem that needs to be solved somehow. I mean, that's just my opinion, but,
I don't know if we can solve it 100%, we can probably make it better.
yeah.
But they're approving a concept, right? They're not approving final drawings. Is that correct? I mean, like, this whole thing is kind of like.
This is a
It's
concept,
conceptual.
absolutely.
So, I mean, we can come back if there's, once you start looking at the details.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
I mean, there's so much I still think you have to approve once you approve the idea.
So, all when we did the block one, when Rob did his building, and we had a highly specific, concrete mix and all that kind of business, which is impossible to match, besides the slate. But, I agree with Neil's first comment, and I think everybody noticed it, it's like a slurry on top of some of these concrete pieces that, and I don't know if we should try and do a little light sandblasting on that to, or is it the sand that's in there?
Yeah, I don't, it wasn't specified, so I don't know exactly what was used. But the resident engineer suggested that they were going to try to do a power wash and see what happens. Also, when concrete cures, as you guys know, it looks different colors until it's all fully
Right.
cured, and they've been pouring it in different phases, and so it's something definitely to look at.
Well, and the existing sidewalks on block one were done in very large sections. And of course, they cracked.
Yeah.
They're all beat up. The ones that you're doing now on the north side of block two are in smaller sections. What are they, about 5 foot by 5 foot? Something like that?
Yeah, they
They're
are.
not gonna suffer that kind of cracking as much. I mean, concrete cracks. That's
It
just the
does,
nature.
we would hope, and the theory is, as you all know, you put in your tool joints and your expansion joints at, regular places so that when it cracks under the joint. And so, the rules of thumb are
That's
things
what
like.
you hope.
Pardon?
You hope it's
Yeah,
gonna
that's
crack
what you
there.
hope. But the way that the joints are lined up on block 2 is, wherever there's a planter or a corner or a building corner, they all line up to that corner so that, where the pressure is hitting it, that it will minimize any cracking.
Well, the joint pattern on block two that you've done so far, it's superb.
Thank you.
It's just the finish.
Yeah.
It's just the finish, yeah, well, and, I mean, and intentionally, the concrete pattern is just a very simple broom finish concrete, so that if in the future concrete squares need to come out, they could be put back pretty simply and matched as close as possible. When communities get into trouble sometimes when there's like specialty colored concrete or special finishes,
Right.
it becomes difficult to match. I mean, the concrete really is intended to just be the floor, and all of the decorative things are the things like the lighting and the furnishings and the plantings that go on top of it was sort of the approach.
Okay.
Is that it?
Well, it sounds like you are ready to recommend a concept to the village board.
I think we are, aren't we? With, however, some of these questions get addressed, but that's not concept, that's detail.
Those are footnotes to
Yeah,
the
right,
recommendation.
yeah. So what do you think? Do we need a motion to do this? We do,
Ideally.
yeah.
Who's
Who wants to
going?
do that?
I mean,
I will start it, and then we'll see how it gets added onto. So I move to recommend submitted preliminary downtown streetscape plan concepts as presented on November 2nd, with the additional comments to be addressed at either future points or during the village meeting, and that we're approving the concept, not as a final, but as a start point.
Second.
Second, okay. Any more discussion? Tim, you got anything else to say about it?
No?
Okay, all right, then we need a roll call. As soon as you
Okay.
finish writing that down.
Member Callahan,
Aye.
Member Kerouac,
Aye.
Member Dolman,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
Aye,
Okay, motion passes.
good.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate all of your guidance with this, and Black too. I mean, it's been a great collaboration.
Okay, we done? Is this off?
So we need a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
we need the motion to adjourn, yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion's approved. We're adjourned.
All right. You know, I did a